Hello again, everyone. This is Jim here. Welcome back to my channel. I've got a video today. It's going to be part one of two or maybe even more part series. And the subject is an N=1 experiment that I've been running now for nearly 5 weeks. And I want to share the background on this, describe it to you, the thought that went into it, the reasons for doing it, and my objectives, that kind of thing. And I'm going to spend a little time doing that. And then on Sunday, which will be February 16th, I think I'm going to release another video with the results. I'm not really going to talk about results today. I'll save that for another video, just to break it up a little bit and to not make this too time consuming. I thought that was a natural way to break it up. Yeah, so this N=1, I'm calling it BodySig, for body signaling. I wanted to have a name rather than just say the N=1 or the experiment. So that's what I came up with. Maybe there's a better name, or maybe somebody can suggest a better name. But I had originally conceived of doing this for 8 weeks, and so this Sunday completes 5 weeks, and I'll share preliminary results with you. And you know what I do after that, I may, after the 5 weeks, I may make a tweak, or I may just continue for the 8, or I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet, and so you'll see why as we go further. Yeah, BodySig, body signaling. I mean, what I'm stressing here is that I've always looked at, ever since I started my weight loss journey, you know, I've used this mantra several times, that I listened to my body. And you know, of course you're not really listening from hearing, but it just means that you're paying close attention to all the cues that it sends you, you know, in terms of when you're hungry, when you're sleepy, when you're stressed, when you're tired, when you got pain. You know, pay attention to those signals, because it's telling you something. But I think it goes the other way too. I think our body is also, I look at our body as a master regulator. It's regulating everything for us. Sometimes we get in the way and we interfere with it doing a good job at the regulation. But I mean, if we just stand back and let it do its job, it does a pretty good job. It takes care of us. It keeps us healthy. It basically, the way I look at it, our body's function is to keep us alive, and do the best it can with what we give it, what we input, and the environment that it finds itself in. So there's signaling going both ways. We're signaling things to our body, and it's telling us things back and forth. We just have to maybe try to understand those signals a little better. Now, to me, my way of looking at it is that the main, number one, most important signal or input of information, if you will, that we give our body is in the form of the food that we put in our mouth every single day. That is the biggest input, the most immediate, important input, in terms of the amount of food, the quality of food, the quantity of food, the type of food, of course, how frequently we eat, etc., etc. Because you know, this is job number one. Our body has to digest and take the nutrients, and you know, it has a lot to do with the food we put in there, and depending on those variables on what we're eating and how often, it makes other decisions. And I think it's very complex. I don't believe that our bodies just sit in there and let's see, count the calories as they come down the chute. Okay, 500, 1,000, 200. Okay, now we know. Where it doesn't matter what we're putting in; it's only a calorie. I think that's ludicrous, but that's not the point of this video to me, to start a rant on calorie theory, on the psycho theory. There's other important signals, and the ones I'm focused on for this intervention, and that I'm going to talk mainly on, are the food, how often we eat and what we eat, etc., and stress, the amount of stress we put on ourselves. And our body deals with stress, and it can be a very important factor. Our body's also dealing with the physical demands that we find ourselves in, whether it's voluntary through exercise or lifting weights or whatever. Depending on the physical demands, it may decide that we need more muscle, or we need to grow bones, or whatever. It's constantly reacting to the inputs. And of course, there's a whole host of, I'm just scratching the surface here. There's all kinds of environmental inputs that it has to deal with, such as, the toxins in the air we breathe, how clean is the air, what toxins are there in the things that we put on our skin, on our bodies, with the lotions and creams and sunscreens and what have you. There's toxins there. There's in some foods there's toxins, and I'm not going to go into that today, but there's, many foods we eat come with their own toxins, and depending on who you are and how much of the certain foods you eat, those toxins may be trying to put holes in your stomach and cause all kinds of problems or pain for you. So, like I said, those are things your body has to deal with. And in the environment today, we've really overloaded our bodies. In terms of food, what we've done is we've just ballooned the amount of sugar that we put in. And sugar can be bread or whatever, anything that is basically a sugar molecule. We just have overrun our bodies with excess sugar. And sugar is a toxin to our body. It has to be dealt with right away. It has to be burned or stored. And it has to be regulated very tightly, the amount of sugar that's in our blood. So it's a challenge for the toxic environment that our bodies find themselves in modern times. The types of foods we eat, the junky foods, the bad oils, the rancid oils. So it's a challenge, and that's frankly why I think we have these modern diseases, is because we've really just gone way overboard with what we're eating. It's very unnatural, especially with all the man-made industrial products. But so for today, just to give you background on this intervention, why I'm taking it, first of all, why I'm doing it. For background on that, I want to use, again, there's going to be charts and data on this, so buckle up, because you know me, I like to drill down into my data and into the minutia and try to parse it and see what it means. But I'm going to start light today. I'm going to show my weight chart from 2019, because the reason I'm going to do this is because it does tell a story. And it's really the fundamental reason why I'm doing something. I'm doing this body signaling N=1. So looking at the weight chart, you'll see I've marked in red some milestone points to kind of make it easy to understand. My trip to Italy, which I did an entire video on last summer, and I've referenced it many times because of what happened to to me in Italy with my food and my eating. But I've made a demarcation line showing that trip, because there's like before Italy and after Italy. There's two different stories for me in 2019. Before Italy, I've just drawn these by hand, but you'll see in red a reference, a mean line through the data. And it's just to show you that, yes, there's some up and down, but overall it was pretty flat. My trend was not up or down. There wasn't a trend on my weight going up or down. It was pretty much flat. Then came the Italy trip, and you see there was a spike there, a big spike. I've never had a spike like that, but yeah, I put on 9 pounds on that trip, and I was a little surprised by that. I knew I was going to eat. I knew I was going to put on weight based on what I was eating, but I didn't quite expect that much. But I'll be honest, I wasn't overly concerned about it because of the prior trend being so flat and being so stable. I expected it to rebound, within, let's say, no more than a couple of weeks. Also, just before and after the trip to Italy, I was also engaged in some, I was training to run a marathon. I was going to try to either run a marathon or a half marathon at the end of September. And so each week I was doing some long runs. Before Italy, I did a 18-mile run. I did a 15-mile run, a few 12-mile runs. And I fully intended to continue this marathon training after Italy because it was frankly only about 5 weeks to go before this marathon. So that was going on at the time, this marathon training. Now, what happened in Italy? I gained 9 pounds, and then, like I said, I expected it to go back. And just from a weight standpoint, I'm going to say it looks like, I believe, about 7 pounds came back within a reasonable amount of time. But it never went all the way back. It never went back to the lower level. It retained like a couple pounds. But then you'll see the trend line for, let's say, after Italy. That trend was noticeably growing. It was upward. And I noticed it without drawing trend lines or anything. I was noticing kind of a creep into my weight. And I didn't really understand why. My only thought was maybe I'm tending to eat too much. And so I went back to food tracking. I thought, well, I'm overeating. I can't trust myself anymore, and I need to go back to tracking food to make sure I, kind of keep things in line. That didn't really seem to do much of anything. It continued on the same trend. Then another thing occurred to me. Somewhere in the time frame around October, I decided to take another intervention. Since it had been at least a couple years since I'd done a fast, and I saw this trend developing and of weight going up. I thought, well, I've always relied on a fast as the thing to break things up, to reset, to break a stall, and I've recommended that to people on this channel before. Is if you get stalled too long, you can always try a fast. If things don't change around for you. So I thought, what the heck? I haven't done a fast for a long time. I did a 5-day fast, and it's pointed to. You can see the arrow pointing to it, and I believe, if memory serves, I lost like 7 pounds on that fast. I wasn't really doing it. I didn't expect to be any kind of permanent weight loss to speak of. I thought I might lose a pound maybe, because you lose 7 pounds during the fast. You always gain some back when you start eating again. And what I found is the trend was that as you get closer to your goal weight and you have less fat on you, the less net weight loss you find with these fasts. But what I found on this fast, for the very first time, within a couple weeks, my weight had rebounded like on a bungee cord and just went right back where it was and continued on the same trend. So for the first time, that fast had no long-term effect on weight. It may have, it felt good. It felt like I was recharged and reacquainted with what it is to be hungry and to appreciation for food, and I probably had autophagy and some other healing. But in terms of weight or breaking the trend, nothing. The other thing, I alluded to the fact I was training for a marathon. There was a huge difference in my training before Italy and after Italy. When I came back from Italy, and I tried to do my long runs, final preparations for this marathon, my long runs were terrible. They never panned out like I wanted. Let's say if I had targeted to do a 15-mile run, I'd have to stop short, for sure by 12 miles. I just couldn't do it. I kind of like hit a wall. So the next week, if I targeted again to do 12 miles, I would crap out around 9 miles. I could never hit the goal, and it got progressively worse. And it was sort of hard. And, I came to a realization one day when I was struggling on a long run. I said, why am I doing this? I'm supposed to be running because I love running and because it's pleasurable and keeps me in good fitness. I don't need to run a marathon. And so I just chucked all that and said, I didn't really understand why this was happening. I hadn't stepped back and looked at the big picture, but I just said, I'm done with this. And I just went back to my regular, I say fun runs, like 4 or 5 miles, 4 or 5 times a week. And I was still at that time maintaining a fairly high intensity in my runs, which I came to recognize later maybe was putting stress on me. But initially, I just want to make a point that something fundamentally changed when I was in Italy. Now, and all I did over there is I ate food like any other normal guy that goes to Italy for 5 days does. I didn't pig out. I didn't, I didn't eat to excess. I did eat. For me, it was all different. It was all different. I was eating twice a day. I was eating pasta. I was eating bread. I was eating hors d'oeuvres. I still eat as much meat as I could get, but there wasn't always meat available in the quantities that I like. So I was eating other things. I had a few times I had dessert. I remember one night I had ice cream for dessert. I remember another pizza night. I had a good time at a pizza party. I was having beer and wine on various occasions. Like I said, it wasn't a big binge. I wasn't just going to excess, but it was a major departure for me. And I don't know if you remember, I did a whole video on this Italy trip. And one thing I mentioned, that while I was over there, I had this moment that I found myself alone with a tin of cookies, and no one else was in the room, and it was after lunch, and I had a coffee, and I started in on this tin of cookies. Everybody was eating cookies, and I thought, well, why not? I'll have a cookie. But it didn't stop with one cookie. I had another and another and another. These weren't big cookies, but I probably had maybe 5 or 6 cookies. And suddenly that I had a flashback to my old self, my old greedy, stuff yourself person that I thought was gone. And I made the statement that person was still there, still inside, just waiting to get out. And, I laugh about it now because I don't have any of that now that I'm home. I mean, I never have any kind of binges or cookie parties or any desserts or anything. I eat every day the same thing and I love it. But what I'm thinking is, did I signal something to my body by that trip, by eating differently for 5 days, kind of like my past self? Did I send a signal that, hey, this is going to be, is my body expecting now, okay, this is going to become the new norm again and jump right back into that? Is that why I had trouble with the running and the weight started creeping up? I mean, I never had an answer for it, and I still don't at this point, but it's kind of the thing that's been in the back of my mind for some time now. So that's why I'm going over it, is this weight graph. It told a story, weight graph. In December, I started, I'm going to say the first phase of, I didn't know this was going to be a big intervention, but in December, and I mentioned this before, I decided to change my running into a low heart rate style because I came to the conclusion that I was stressing myself with the high heart rate by different stuff I was reading. And so I really zoned in on that first. I was doing that kind of informally, but that became part of this intervention also. So yeah, in December, I was, doing the low heart rate training. I wasn't paying that close attention to it. I just was enjoying myself. But again, the trend, I seem to be kind of stuck with this higher trend like that I ended 2019 on. And it was the holidays. I wasn't fixated on any of this. And let me just say, this is a small thing. I mean, I gained from where I was stable in the beginning of 2019 to where I'd ended. It's like a 3 or 4, maybe 5 pound change. So this is not the end of the world. It's nothing to sound the alarm on, but it just bugs me because like I said, I'm into the data, I'm into the minutia, I'm trying to understand the mechanisms. So I ended December thinking about just doing the low heart rate training. And by the way, that was kind of enjoyable. I'm still doing it today, but that was enjoyable. I mean, I do feel less stressed. I kind of enjoy the activity. It's at the lower heart rate, it's easier to think, and it's easy to look forward to. Certainly it's better than doing a long 12, 15-mile run. I mean, that's more arduous. So it's been working well. The turning point for me was I did recently an interview with Kayla, 6 Miles to Supper, a second interview. I did that, I think, right in the beginning of January. And after the interview, we were chatting a bit on Skype. And during our conversation, we were talking about, how so many people just have that. They have either a stall or they have that stubborn last 10 pounds to lose. And I said, yeah, in fact, those are the kind of people where I don't really know what to say anymore. And especially after my experience in the latter half of 2019, my go-to fasting to restart the weight loss didn't work anymore. And that's usually what I tell people. And in fact, I found that I had 3 or 4 or 5 pounds extra. And I said, well, yeah, what would, before I recommend to somebody how to lose weight, maybe I need to understand why I have this weight gain. And then it started clicking to me, yeah, this would be a good test. I should study this a little bit. I should try to figure this out. And then maybe, there's many people going to be just like me to have a little weight to lose. And how do you restart that? So after that conversation, I started really thinking about this. Like, what could I do? What kind of a test should I do to kind of figure this out? And that's when I came up with 3 things that are the basis for this BodySig intervention. So I started to ask myself, what changes did I signal to my body uh, by that Italy trip? Uh, and what do I need to signal now in order to reverse course and to get rid of it? My main objective was to get rid of, for me personally, my personal objective on this N equals 1 was to reverse that trend in the latter half of 2019. To get back to stability, to reverse the weight gain. I mean, maybe if I could lose a couple pounds, that'd be fine, but it's not mandatory as long as I just become stable. And I wanted to do so, number one, with no tracking. I did not want to say, well, I'm going to have to just every single day be a slave to the chronometer and input all my food and find out where I didn't want to do that. So that was mainly what I wanted to do. My objective. The other objective was to maybe try to learn something. Maybe if I found something that worked for me, maybe I could take it a little bit further and see if it truly is something to lose the last 5 or 10 pounds. Maybe this is something I could share with other people. The other given though, it had to be no tracking, and it had to be OMAD. I'm not going to give up my 1 meal a day. That's my lifestyle. I'm not going to complicate it and reverse course and do anything different. So it had to be OMAD with no tracking. So I came up there's three elements to this intervention. And one I've already mentioned is the low stress running. Now I took it a step further. I recall that I've seen a graph that shows the rate of oxidation for fat oxidation compared to carbohydrate oxidation, plotted against the percentage of your maximum. It's called VO2 max. It's basically your how much percentage of your maximum exertion from being totally at rest to totally maxed out. And it really, you can look at it as your heart rate, your maximum heart rate to your resting heart rate. And I'll show that graph. There's a zone on there. You can see right in the middle where on the top is the fat oxidation curve. And you see that as your heart rate goes up, moving to the right, the fat oxidation rate increases a lot compared to the carbohydrate oxidation down on the bottom, which actually it goes down for a while. It bottoms out in the middle, and so in that middle you got a big differential between the fat oxidation and the carbohydrate oxidation, and that is where I wanted to target. And so I've calculated where my heart rate needs to be in that maximum zone. You know, I mean, this is not new. I mean, this is people call it a fat burning zone or whatever, but for me it worked out between like 95 to 125 beats per minute heart rate. So my thinking was, okay, not only is this going to be low stress if I stay in that zone, it's going to make my efforts to lose weight. And also, I didn't mention this, one of my objectives was to get leaner, because I didn't present any data yet on my graph as far as lean, but I had over like a year and a half that I picked up a percentage and a half or so on, probably no, full 2% on body fat, according to my scale, if you can believe it. But, you know, it was a low, I'm going to say like about a year and a half, somewhere around, I'm going to say around 18%. But then towards the latter half of 2019, it was all the way up, you know, it was pretty consistent, 20%. So everything was going backwards for me in 2019 after Italy. And I should add that not only was it the weight, the few pounds, but also uh, my waist. And I mentioned in a prior video that I have a little trouble with the waist measurement. I'm not always certain, but I was pretty certain that it had gone up a little bit. And the best determinant for me on the waist is I wear all the same waist size trousers. They're all technically 34s there, but depending on the model and the manufacturer, you know how they vary. I've got some 34s that are tight and some that are they're just fine, and then some that are just a little bit loose. Well, I started noticing everything moving toward the tight ones became uncomfortably tight. You know, they're too tight. I didn't want to wear them, and the ones that are looser became more snug. So, you know, everything was pointing to me in the wrong direction. That's why I'm doing this intervention, because the weight I could deal with the weight, but the waist growing, no, that's I can't accept that. So the first aspect of this is the low stress workouts, staying in the fat burning zone of, for me, 90 to 125 beats per minute on my heart rate. The second intervention that I decided to take is related to the fat content of the meat that I eat. Prior to this, I had always been, my preference was to have fatty cuts of meat. I also mix it up with some lean, but I prioritized fattier meats, like your ribeyes, your chuck roasts. I went for the fat. Now, I wasn't like some carnivores who really go overboard, and to me it's overboard, but some people do really well with high fat, with the 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio, which requires eating suet and adding fat. And I tried this for a few days and I didn't care for it at all. So I backed out of it, and I was comfortable with my fat preference diet, fatty cuts of meat preferred. And my estimate, I mean, I don't have any hard rule of thumb on this, but I'm going to estimate that I was like 3-to-1 in terms of fatty cuts of meat versus lean cuts. I was like a 3-to-1 ratio there. So what I decided to do, because I've been listening to other people talking about the opposite extreme, eating very lean and having some good success at getting lean. Eat lean to get lean. I've seen this a number of times, and people talking about losing weight that way. I decided to give that a shot, and by eating lean, all I did is flip the ratio around. I kept I'm not saying that I'm never eating any of the fattier cuts. I do, but I use that 3-to-1 ratio. But now I'm doing 3-to-1 lean cuts to fatty cuts. So I've been eating a lot of round steak and sirloin and 10% ground beef, with a fat percent of ground sirloin. I haven't eaten it yet, but I've got some chicken breasts. I mean, if you can believe that. Anyway, I've got a whole list. I'm not going to go into it now, but that'll be probably in the results. I'll give more details. But I've been eating lean. And again, I'm not calculating it. I'm not weighing and measuring these ratios. It's just prioritizing lean meats. The third part of this intervention is the idea for this came from the fact that the really only explanation that I could come up with for the change after Italy is that I was overeating, and over time I was creeping up, eating more and more. And I've mentioned this in prior videos that it seemed like I just over time would gradually eat more and more. And what seemed excessive in 1 month became the norm in following months. I could commit to doing living by the food tracker and probably get that under control, but I didn't want to do that. And so here's the plan I came up with. I would fast 1 day a week. So since I eat 1 meal a day, I eat seven meals a week. I was going to cut. My plan on this intervention here to up until now is to have only 6 meals per week. But those meals I would eat with gusto. I would eat ad libitum. I would eat, I would not be afraid to fill up. And I've been doing that. But on 1 day, I would fast. And my thinking was this would give me a rough balance between, eating the way I want to, which is to be free and I call it freestyle eating or eating with gusto. Because I find that enjoyable. It's enjoyable just to start making food and eating, and it's fun. It's easy and delicious, but it's also fun to eat that way. So that was my plan. I would rather do the 1 day of fasting a week rather than tracking every single day, because frankly, fasting 1 day is not that hard anymore for me. It's boring. And on my fasting days, I still have coffee. I have 3 coffees. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner is a coffee. And that gets me through, but it's boring not having, it's just really boring, and I got to fill the time. It does allow me a little more time to do other things. Actually, it allows me to go to bed earlier, which I think is also good for stress and getting sleep, because I don't have this time that I'm spending eating. Yeah, so that was my thinking going into it, that I was somehow eating too much. And I would regulate it by having a little more feasting and a little more fasting in my weekly schedule. Now, my goal was not to cut calories or to consume less in total. I was hoping that just my natural eating on the 6 days of freestyle eating would give me at least the same number of calories as I would have in a whole week of eating 7 days. But like I said, I'm going freestyle with this. I didn't know, and I didn't record anything during I'm going to say like the first 3 to 4 weeks of this test. I didn't want to contaminate my mind with any numbers as far as the food. So I didn't do any weighing, measuring. I just went, like I said, freestyle. Then I realized, well, I need some numbers. I need to write something down so that I can go back and enter the data later in the chronometer and get some facts. So I have been just recording on paper the weights of the food and what I ate, and so that I could go in when this is done and enter it in chronometer and see, did I cut calories or did I not cut calories, or did I gain calories, or did I stay the same? So, but I wanted to do it I wanted to keep this intuitive and freestyle so that I'm not a slave any more than I am now. So that's it. That's this body signaling. I'm sending the signal that the low stress, because I think that gives a good environment, allows the body to do maximum fat burning. Eating lean, I don't really know what kind of signal that sends, other than this is just a test, because I've never done it before. I've done the fat thing a long time, and I don't know really. That's just something out there I've been considering, so I decided to throw that into the mix for this N=1. And then finally, the feasting and fasting. I think I gave you the logic there, was to kind of control what I perceive to be an overeating problem. I started this on January 6th and plan to go for 8 weeks. And to reiterate, my goals, my personal goals were minimal, just to reverse the trend from 2019. to reduce stress, because that was apparent to me that I had accumulated stress from all the running. And I don't know how, I can't explain why the trip to Italy set things off for me. It seemed to add stress in my running. I don't know. But maybe if I can get through this, maybe if this test, this n equals 1, if it shows any promise or anything lasting, maybe I can drill down further and figure it out, what it was about the trip. Like I said, all I can think is that it resurrected something inside me, some old habits that just resurfaced. I did get a comment from a person, I can't remember who it was, who suggested that the latter half of 2019 was maybe just a seasonal thing. And I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned that. And I considered that, and I looked at that. I only have really like 2 seasons of data, so and a lot of things are going on during that time with me. Part of the time I was losing weight in the beginning of the year, and then I was stable, and then I guess I just want to say I'm not totally discounting that. That could be part of it, because looking at the data I do have, it seems like possibly, as you come into autumn and winter, that there could be a seasonal change there. But I'm a little bit skeptical, because this seasonal change just was a rapid shift that occurred after that Italy trip. I mean, it was like flipping a switch, it went off and on. It was, a seasonal change, you would think it'd be more gradual. So maybe that is on top of it, but anyway, I'm keeping an open mind. So I have results. I'm not going to share them today. I'm going to wait until the 5 weeks are finished to share the results, which are on, like I said, Sunday. Hopefully I can put together some more graphs and some more data to show you where I'm at now. I'll just say it's interesting, and I've got some new thoughts about all this. The thoughts I've given you today are the thoughts I had going into this, what my thoughts and expectations are. I kind of got some new ideas and some new thinking now about what to do going forward, and I'll share that in the next video. So that'll be to get you to come back for the next one. I'll leave that teaser in there. I think some interesting things that I've learned. So I'll cut this. This is, like I said, this is why I broke it up. This is 45 minutes, and all I did was just explain the background. So that's it. Body signaling intervention. I've described it fully. Stay tuned, because in upcoming days there'll be some results that I'll share, and hopefully you all will find this interesting. Again, I always like to give a shout out and thanks to everyone who follows me and sticks with this. I know there's some people that really are maybe even more into the data than I am. I discovered after my last video, there's plenty of people out there that are tracking and to just love that. And it doesn't mean that we're crazy. It just means that we're into the details, and we like it. I do it because I like it, not because I'm obsessed with it. I'm trying to understand things, but I'm not trying to my purpose is not to try to understand things necessarily in a scientific way, like to know every single metabolic pathway or every. I mean, there's plenty of scientists doing that already who are way smarter than me, have way more information at their fingertips. And I think they're not learning a whole lot about how the system works in total. I mean, yeah, they're scratching the surface, but I think my approach is to step back from a systems overview approach and just try to understand, like I said, the signaling part of it, and to understand it like from a communication standpoint. Anyway, thanks all for watching, and I'll see you again soon with some results. Take care.